He said she would never survive without him. She proved him wrong. Some people do not leave a relationship all at once. They leave slowly, in small, quiet pieces. A piece disappears the first time they are laughed at for having a dream. Another piece disappears the first time they are told they are nothing without someone else. Another piece disappears after they apologize for pain they did not cause, just to keep the peace at the dinner table. By the time they finally walk out the door, the world thinks they made a sudden decision. But the truth is, their heart had been packing for years. This is the story of a woman named Clara Bennett, a woman who learned that survival is not always loud. Sometimes survival sounds like a key turning in a cheap apartment lock after midnight. Sometimes it looks like a tired mother folding laundry, while a pot of soup simmers on the stove. Sometimes it feels like sitting in a parking lot with tears drying on your cheeks, whispering to yourself, just one more day. And sometimes survival becomes something stronger than anyone expected. It becomes proof. Clara grew up in a small town outside Knoxville, Tennessee, where people waved from porches, church bells marked Sunday mornings, and most families knew your business before you had decided whether to tell it. Her father repaired roofs until his knees gave out, and her mother cleaned rooms at a lake resort during tourist season. They were not rich, not even close, but they taught Clara that a person's worth was not measured by what they owned. Her mother used to tell her, "Baby, if all you have left is your name, keep it clean. Nobody can repossess that." Clara carried those words with her like a prayer. She was a quiet girl, the kind teachers described as dependable, the kind neighbors trusted to babysit, the kind who said thank you even when life gave her very little to be thankful for. She loved books, old country songs, and the smell of rain on hot pavement. She dreamed of becoming a nurse because she wanted to be useful in a world that too often made gentle people feel invisible. But dreams can become fragile when life presses too hard. Her father's accident happened the week after her high school graduation, and instead of leaving for community college, Clara took extra shifts at a diner to help her family make rent. That was where she met Martin Hayes. Martin walked into the diner wearing a gray suit that cost more than Clara's car. He was older than her by 6 years, confident in a way that made people turn their heads. He had a polished smile, a silver watch, and the voice of a man who had never had to ask twice. He came in every Thursday after meeting with clients from his real estate office, ordered black coffee and pecan pie, and left a tip so large that the other waitresses teased Clara whenever he sat in her section. At first, Martin made her feel seen. That was the dangerous part. He remembered her name, asked about her father, noticed when she cut her hair, and told her she had a calmness that made the whole room feel softer. Clara, who had spent most of her life being responsible and overlooked, did not know what to do with that kind of attention. When he asked her to dinner, she said no twice. The third time, after he showed up with a bouquet of white daisies, because she had once mentioned roses felt too serious, she said yes. Their beginning was tender, or at least it looked that way from the outside. Martin opened doors, paid for meals, drove her along back roads with the windows down, and talked about building a future where Clara would never have to worry about money again. He told her she deserved rest. He told her she deserved pretty things. He told her he admired how hard she worked. To a tired young woman with a sick father and overdue bills, Martin sounded like shelter. Clara married him at 24 in a little white chapel with ivy climbing the windows. Her mother cried through the ceremony. Her father, leaning heavily on a cane, whispered that she looked like springtime. Martin's family filled the front pews in expensive clothes, smiling politely with faces that said they were trying not to judge the diner girl their son had chosen. Clara noticed, but Martin squeezed her hand and told her, "Don't worry about them. You're with me now." At the time, that sounded like protection. Years later, she would understand it was a warning. For the first 2 years, Clara believed she had been rescued. Martin bought a brick house at the edge of town with a wide kitchen and a magnolia tree in the yard. He insisted she quit the diner because, as he put it, "My wife doesn't need to carry plates for strangers." Clara wanted to continue nursing classes part-time, but Martin said they should wait until they were settled. Then he said they should wait until after the first year of marriage. Then he said classes were expensive and unnecessary because he made enough for both of them. Each time Clara brought it up, he kissed her forehead and said, "You don't have to prove anything anymore." It sounded kind. It was not kind. Kindness does not make your world smaller. Martin's love came with invisible locks. He wanted dinner ready when he got home. He wanted the house spotless because clients might stop by. He wanted her phone on the counter during meals because couples should have no secrets, though his own phone remained face down in his pocket. He wanted to choose what she wore to his office parties because he understood how people in his business judged appearances. He wanted her to smile more, talk less, spend carefully, and remember that everything they had came from his work. The first time he humiliated her in public was at a charity fundraiser. Clara mispronounced the last name of a developer Martin hoped to impress. It was a small mistake, the kind anyone could make, but Martin laughed too loudly and said, "You'll have to forgive Clara. She's still learning how grown-up conversations work." The table chuckled. Clara's face burned. On the drive home, he told her she was too sensitive. That became the rhythm of their marriage. He would wound her, then accuse her of bleeding too much. When their daughter Lily was born, Clara thought motherhood might soften him. For a little while, it did. Martin took pictures in the hospital, posted them online with captions about his beautiful family, and brought Clara flowers that looked enormous beside the hospital bed. But sleepless nights annoyed him. Crying irritated him. Bills frustrated him. The attention Lily required made him feel neglected, and somehow that became Clara's fault too. "You're lucky," he told her one evening, when Lily was 6 months old and Clara had not slept more than 3 hours. "Most women would kill to stay home with their child. You act like you're doing hard labor." Clara was rocking Lily against her shoulder, her hair greasy, her shirt stained with formula, her body aching with exhaustion. She wanted to say that caring for a baby was work. She wanted to say that loneliness could fill a house even when someone else lived in it. Instead, she lowered her eyes and said, "I know, I'm sorry." Those 2 words became her habit. "I'm sorry? Sorry dinner is late. Sorry the baby cried. Sorry the laundry is not folded. Sorry I asked a question. Sorry I had an opinion. Sorry I existed loudly enough to bother you." By the time Lily turned 8, Martin's real estate business had grown enough for him to move among wealthier circles. He drove a black SUV, wore tailored shirts, and spoke in the confident language of men who believed money made them moral. At home, he became colder. He criticized Clara's clothes, her cooking, her friends, her family, even the way she laughed with Lily. He said her mother's house smelled like old carpet. He said her father was a cautionary tale about poor planning. He said Clara should be grateful he had lifted her out of that life. What Martin never understood was that Clara had not been ashamed of where she came from. He taught her shame by insisting she should be. Clara's world narrowed until it contained only errands, school pickups, silent dinners, and the careful study of Martin's moods. She learned to hear his temper in the way he shut the front door. She learned which sigh meant disappointment and which meant danger. She learned to hide small amounts of cash in a coffee tin behind the flour, not because she had a plan, but because some instinct inside her understood that a woman should never be completely without options. One October afternoon, Clara found a folded receipt in Martin's jacket pocket while preparing laundry. It was from a restaurant 2 counties over, a place with white tablecloths and ocean prices in a landlocked town. The meal had been for 2. The time stamp was from the night Martin said a client dinner ran late. Clara stared at it for a long moment, feeling a strange calm settle over her. There had been other signs: the cologne he suddenly wore, the way he stepped outside to take calls, the locked phone. The impatience whenever she asked where he had been. When Martin came home, Clara placed the receipt on the kitchen table. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. "Who were you with?" Martin glanced at the receipt, then at her. For 1 second, something like surprise crossed his face. Then he smiled, not warmly, but with amusement. "That's what this is about." "Who were you with, Martin?" He loosened his tie. "A colleague. A colleague named Vanessa." The name had slipped from her memory like a key from a hidden pocket. She had seen it flash on his phone weeks earlier, late at night, followed by a heart emoji. Martin's expression changed. The smile disappeared. He walked to the sink, poured a glass of water, and took his time drinking it. Then he turned around and said, "You need to be careful, Clara." The room became very quiet. He did not deny it. He did not apologize. He did not look ashamed. Instead, he leaned against the counter and explained, with the calm arrogance of a man discussing a business expense, that he had needs Clara no longer met. He said Vanessa understood pressure. Vanessa knew how to dress. Vanessa knew how to talk to important people. Vanessa did not spend her days smelling like laundry detergent and school lunches. And then, because cruelty often saves its sharpest knife for last, he said, "You should be grateful I still come home." Something inside Clara cracked, but it did not shatter, not yet. Lily was upstairs doing homework, humming softly to herself. Clara thought of her daughter hearing raised voices, seeing tears, learning that love meant humiliation. So Clara folded the receipt, placed it back on the table and said, "I want you to leave." Martin laughed. He actually laughed. "Leave, this is my house." "It's our house." "No," he said, stepping closer. "It's my house, my mortgage, my money, my name on everything that matters." Clara's throat tightened, but she did not step back. Martin looked at her as if seeing not a wife, but an employee he had decided to fire. "Listen to me carefully," he said. "You have no job, no degree, no savings worth mentioning. You have no idea how the world works anymore. If I walk out that door, you won't last a month." Clara felt every word land. No job, no degree, no savings, no idea. Then he said the sentence that would follow her for years, the sentence that would become both a scar and a match. "You would never survive without me." He said it quietly, almost kindly, as though explaining a fact she was too foolish to understand. He expected her to break. He expected tears, apologies, pleading. For a moment, Clara almost gave him what he wanted. Fear rose inside her like floodwater. She pictured bills, rent, groceries, Lily's school supplies, health insurance, car repairs. She pictured Martin's family shaking their heads. She pictured neighbors whispering that poor Clara had gotten too proud. But then she pictured Lily, older someday, standing in a kitchen while someone told her she was helpless. Clara pictured her daughter believing it. That was the moment the fear changed shape. Clara did not shout, she did not slap him. She did not throw the glass sitting beside the sink, though part of her wanted to. She simply looked at him and said, "Then watch me." Martin blinked. He was not used to Clara speaking in a voice that belonged entirely to her. The divorce took 11 months and cost Clara more than money. Martin fought over everything, not because he wanted it all, but because he wanted her to understand he could make leaving painful. He delayed paperwork, questioned her parenting, froze accounts, and told mutual friends she had become unstable. Vanessa appeared beside him at hearings wearing perfume that entered rooms before she did. Martin's lawyer painted Clara as dependent and incapable, a woman too emotional to manage her own life. Clara's lawyer was a tired woman named Ms. Russell who kept peppermints in her desk drawer and had the eyes of someone who had seen too many women sit across from her with shaking hands. "He wants you exhausted," she told Clara. "Do not give him the satisfaction of collapsing in public. Collapse at home if you must. Then get up for the next appointment." So Clara did. She rented a small 2-bedroom apartment above a closed florist shop on Maple Avenue. The heat clanked in winter, the kitchen faucet whistled, and the living room window looked out over an alley where delivery trucks woke them before sunrise. Lily cried the first night because she missed the magnolia tree. Clara held her on a mattress on the floor and cried too, silently, into her daughter's hair. "I'm sorry," Clara whispered. Lily pulled back and looked at her with red eyes. "Are we poor now?" The question hurt because it was honest. Clara brushed the hair from Lily's face. "We're starting over." "Is starting over bad?" Clara looked around at the boxes, the cracked paint, the bare light bulb, the stack of unpaid bills on the counter. Then she remembered her mother's voice. "If all you have left is your name, keep it clean." "No," Clara said, "starting over is brave." But bravery did not pay electric bills. Clara found work cleaning offices at night. During the day, she worked part-time at a grocery store bakery, writing names on birthday cakes and smiling at customers who complained about frosting colors. Between shifts, she drove Lily to school, helped with homework, sat through court meetings, and slept in broken pieces. Her hands cracked from cleaning chemicals. Her feet swelled. Her old car coughed every time she turned the key, as if even it doubted her. Some nights she sat in the bathtub after Lily fell asleep and let the shower run so her daughter would not hear her crying. She missed comfort. Not Martin exactly, but comfort. She missed not calculating the price of milk. She missed not fearing the mail. She missed being able to buy Lily new shoes without checking the account balance 3 times. Poverty was not romantic. Independence did not feel like a victory anthem. Most days, it felt like exhaustion wearing a brave face. Martin made sure she knew he was watching. He drove by the grocery store once and saw her behind the bakery counter in a paper hat. Later that evening, a text arrived. "Looks like you found your level." Clara stared at the message until the words blurred. Then she deleted it and went back to washing dishes. At custody exchanges, Martin arrived in pressed shirts and polished shoes, often with Vanessa in the passenger seat. He called Clara's apartment, the upstairs storage unit. He asked Lily whether she had eaten anything besides discount noodles. He slipped $50 bills into Lily's backpack and said, loudly enough for Clara to hear, "In case your mother forgets how children work." The worst part was how Lily changed after weekends with him. She came home quiet, careful, sometimes angry. Once, when Clara said they could not afford a school trip to Atlanta, Lily snapped, "Dad says you chose this life." Clara stood in the kitchen holding a wooden spoon, feeling the words go through her. Lily's face crumpled almost immediately. "I'm sorry, Mom." Clara put the spoon down and hugged her. "You don't have to be sorry for being upset." "But I said something mean." "Yes," Clara said gently, "and mean words hurt, but we can tell the truth after. That's how we repair things." Lily whispered, "Did you choose this?" Clara thought carefully. "I chose peace. Sometimes peace is expensive at first." That became one of the lessons Clara gave her daughter in those years. Peace is expensive at first. Pride does not keep you warm. Ask for help before the lights go out. Cheap soup tastes better when nobody is yelling. A small home can hold more love than a big house full of fear. Clara's turning point came because of a woman named Ruth Alvarez, who owned the closed florist shop below the apartment. Ruth was in her 60s, widowed, sharp-tongued, and kind in a way that pretended not to be kindness. The flower shop had been her husband's dream, but after he died, she shut the doors and kept the building. She lived in the back unit and spent mornings sweeping the sidewalk as if the neighborhood still belonged to her. One evening, Ruth found Clara sitting on the stairs with her head in her hands. Clara had just learned her car needed a new transmission, a repair she could not afford. She was due at the office cleaning job in 40 minutes. Lily had a fever upstairs, and the landlord had left a message about late rent. Clara was not crying dramatically. She was just empty. Ruth stood at the bottom of the stairs with a broom in her hand and said, "You planning to sit there until life apologizes?" Clara gave a tired laugh. "Maybe. Life is rude, it won't." That should have annoyed Clara, but instead it made her laugh again, for real this time. Ruth climbed the stairs slowly and sat beside her. For a while they listened to traffic pass on Maple Avenue. Finally, Ruth said, "You're good with flowers." Clara looked at her. "What?" "The pots outside your window. You brought those half-dead grocery store mums back like Lazarus. And every time someone gives you a sad bouquet, you rearrange it so it looks expensive." "My mother used to keep a garden." "Good, then you inherited something useful." Ruth nodded toward the dark storefront below them. "Shop's been closed 4 years. Rent is wasted space. I've been thinking of reopening for holidays, small scale. I'm too old to stand all day. You need extra money, maybe we help each other." Clara almost said no. She was too tired, too busy, too afraid, but a memory came to her, Martin saying she had no idea how the world worked. For years she had believed work had to be something someone allowed her to do. Ruth's offer felt different. It felt like a door. "What would I do?" Clara asked. "Learn, sweep, arrange, deliver, make mistakes, fix them, show up." So Clara began spending Saturday mornings downstairs in the dusty old flower shop. The sign still read Alvarez Blooms in faded green letters. Inside, buckets, ribbons, vases, and old display shelves waited beneath sheets. The place smelled like dust, dry stems, and possibility. Ruth taught Clara how to trim roses underwater, how to make carnations look fuller, how to wire orchids, how to price arrangements without apologizing for making a profit. Clara learned fast because she had spent years studying moods. Flowers had moods too. Some needed space. Some needed support. Some looked plain alone but became beautiful beside the right color. By Valentine's Day, Alvarez Blooms reopened for weekend orders. Ruth handled suppliers and bookkeeping. Clara designed arrangements at a work table in the back while Lily did homework beside a bucket of tulips. They made modest money at first, nothing life-changing. But the first time a customer paid Clara $85 for a bouquet she had created with her own hands, Clara sat in the back room and stared at the cash like it was a miracle. Ruth watched from the doorway. "Don't look so shocked, you made something people wanted." "I didn't think I could." "That's because somebody spent years telling you that you couldn't. The brain gets lazy around repeated lies." Clara taped that sentence inside her mind. The shop became her second education. Ruth introduced her to vendors, funeral directors, event planners, church secretaries, and brides who arrived with Pinterest boards and impossible budgets. Clara learned how to negotiate, how to say no, how to invoice, how to apologize without giving away free labor, and how to stand firm when customers mistook kindness for weakness. At night, after cleaning offices, she watched online business courses on her phone with the volume low. She learned spreadsheets, marketing, basic accounting, and how social media could make a small business look bigger than it was. Lily became part of the shop too. She tied ribbons, swept leaves, named the delivery van Daisy, and sometimes answered the phone in a serious voice that made older customers melt. The apartment above the shop no longer felt like a symbol of failure. It felt like the top floor of a life under construction. Martin noticed the change before Clara realized it herself. At a custody exchange in late spring, Lily ran to Clara holding a small succulent in a painted pot. "Mom, I made this for the school fundraiser. Dad said it's cute, but he said plants don't pay bills." Clara looked at Martin. He leaned against his SUV with sunglasses on, smiling that old smile. "I heard you're playing florist now," he said. Clara buckled Lily's backpack into the car. "Working florist. Is that what we're calling it?" "It's what it is." Martin lowered his voice. "You know, Clara, I could still make things easier. You don't have to keep humiliating yourself." There it was again, the hook hidden inside help. For years, Clara would have explained. She would have defended herself, listed her hours, justified her effort, tried to make him understand. This time she simply said, "I'm not humiliated." His smile tightened. She drove away before he could answer, and for the first time in years, she did not shake afterward. Success did not come quickly, that is important to say. Stories often skip the hard middle because the hard middle is not glamorous. Clara did not open a shop on Monday and become a businesswoman by Friday. She burned arrangements. She underpriced weddings. She forgot delivery routes. She cried over invoices. She ruined a batch of imported lilies by storing them too warm. She once spelled a condolence card wrong and had to drive across town in a thunderstorm to replace it before the funeral service began. She made mistakes that cost money she did not have. But each mistake taught her something Martin never had. Consequences were not the same as worthlessness. A mistake was a bill, a lesson, an inconvenience, sometimes a humiliation. It was not a verdict on who she was. One summer afternoon, a wedding planner named Denise Walker came into the shop with a crisis. Another florist had canceled 3 weeks before a small lakeside wedding. The budget was not huge, but the bride was desperate. Ruth started to say they were too busy. Clara heard herself ask, "What kind of wedding?" Denise looked doubtful. Alvarez Blooms was still more neighborhood shop than luxury vendor. But Clara listened carefully as Denise described soft wildflowers, blue ribbons for the bride's late father, arrangements that felt elegant but not stiff. Clara understood grief hidden inside celebration. She understood wanting beauty without pretending pain had not been there. "I can do it," Clara said. Ruth stared at her, Denise stared at her, Clara's own heart stared at her. The wedding nearly broke her. She worked 16-hour days, called in favors, borrowed a refrigerated trailer from a church acquaintance, and turned the shop into a storm of stems and ribbon. Lily helped label boxes. Ruth muttered that Clara had lost her mind while quietly making coffee and sandwiches. The night before the wedding, Clara stood in the shop surrounded by finished arrangements. White hydrangeas, blue delphiniums, lavender, eucalyptus, and small framed charms tied into the bridal bouquet for the bride's father. The room looked like dawn had taken physical form. At the venue, the bride cried when she saw the bouquet. Not polite tears, real tears. "It feels like him," she whispered. Clara did not know what to say. She only squeezed the bride's hand. 2 weeks later, photos from that wedding spread online. The photographer tagged Alvarez Blooms, and suddenly Clara's phone would not stop buzzing. Brides messaged. Churches called. A local magazine asked to feature the shop in a piece about small businesses revitalizing Maple Avenue. Denise recommended Clara to another client, then another. Ruth acted annoyed by all the attention, but Clara caught her crying behind a stack of ribbon boxes. "You proud?" Clara asked. Ruth wiped her eyes. "I have allergies." "To success." "To nonsense," Ruth said, but she hugged Clara hard. The magazine article came out in September with a photo of Clara standing in front of the shop, wearing jeans, a cream blouse, and a shy smile. The headline read, "Maple Avenue Blooms Again." The article told the story of Ruth's late husband, the closed storefront, and the young mother who helped bring it back to life. It did not mention Martin. Clara was grateful for that. For once, her life was described without reference to the man who had tried to define it. But Martin saw the article. He sent no text this time. Instead, 2 days later, Vanessa came into the shop. Clara was trimming stems behind the counter when the bell above the door rang. Vanessa entered wearing a fitted white coat and oversized sunglasses, though the day was cloudy. She looked around the shop with the careful expression of someone inspecting a hotel room. Clara's stomach tightened, but she kept trimming. "Clara," Vanessa said, as though they were old friends. "Vanessa, I hope this isn't awkward." Clara set the clippers down. "That depends on why you're here." Vanessa smiled. "I'm planning a small charity luncheon. Martin suggested I stop by. He said you could use the business." There were many answers Clara could have given. Sharp answers, angry answers, answers that had waited years in the back of her throat. But the shop was quiet, sunlight falling across buckets of dahlias, and Clara realized something surprising. Vanessa no longer looked like a rival. She looked like a woman wearing expensive armor. Clara reached for an order form. "What date?" Vanessa seemed disappointed, as if she had expected a scene. "Next month." "Budget?" Vanessa blinked. "I'm not sure." "Then you can email me when you are. I require a deposit for event work." A small red flush crept up Vanessa's neck. "Martin said you might be flexible." "Martin is not part of my pricing." For the first time, Vanessa's smile faltered completely. She removed her sunglasses. There was tiredness under her eyes, the kind makeup cannot quite hide. "You've changed," Vanessa said softly. Clara looked at her. "Yes." Vanessa glanced toward the door, then leaned closer. "He still talks about you, you know." Clara said nothing. "Not kindly," Vanessa added, "but often." That should have pleased Clara. It did not. It only made her sad for the years she had spent hoping Martin would think of her differently. Being remembered by a cruel person was not the same as being loved. "I hope you get what you need," Clara said. Vanessa stared at her for a long moment, then left without placing an order. After the bell stopped trembling, Clara walked to the back room and found Ruth pretending not to listen. "Well," Ruth asked. Clara picked up a bucket. "We're not doing the luncheon unless she pays full price." Ruth smiled. "There's the woman I was waiting to meet." A year 3 after the divorce, Clara's life had a shape she recognized as her own. She and Lily still lived above the shop, but the apartment had been painted warm yellow. There were second-hand bookshelves in the living room, plants on every windowsill, and a small table where they ate dinner without fear. Clara finished her GED coursework for college prerequisites she had abandoned years earlier, then enrolled in evening classes for small business management instead of nursing. She realized that wanting to heal people did not always require a hospital. Sometimes healing looked like helping a widow choose flowers for a husband she had loved for 50 years. Sometimes it looked like making a wedding bouquet for a bride whose father could not walk her down the aisle. Sometimes it looked like paying a young employee a fair wage because you knew what it felt like to be desperate. Alvarez Blooms expanded slowly. First they opened weekdays. Then they hired 2 part-time employees. Then they added workshops, wreath making in December, herb gardens in spring, sympathy arrangement classes for church volunteers. Clara created a subscription service for local offices, delivering fresh arrangements every Monday morning. She built relationships with funeral homes and wedding venues. She learned to look bankers in the eye. She learned that confidence did not mean never being afraid. Confidence meant bringing your fear into the meeting and not letting it speak first. Martin, meanwhile, began to lose the shine he had polished so carefully. The real estate market shifted. A risky development deal collapsed. Clients whispered that he had overleveraged properties and borrowed against future sales that never came. Vanessa, who had loved the version of Martin that arrived with dinners and diamonds, did not enjoy the version that came home angry and cornered. They fought in restaurants. They unfollowed and refollowed each other online. People noticed. Small towns always do. Clara tried not to listen, but news has a way of entering through cracks. A customer mentioned Martin's office downsizing. A parent at school said his SUV had been traded for something older. Lily came home from a weekend visit quieter than usual and asked, "Mom, can someone be rich and still scared?" Clara paused while chopping carrots for soup. "Yes." Dad yelled at Vanessa because she bought new curtains. Clara kept her voice calm. "That must have been uncomfortable." "He said women spend money like water." Lily looked down. "He talks to her like he used to talk to you." Clara's hand tightened around the knife, not from jealousy, from recognition. Lily, she said carefully, what happened between your dad and me is adult business. But I want you to understand something. No one has the right to make you feel small so they can feel powerful. Lily nodded. She was 13 now, tall and observant, with Clara's quiet eyes and Martin's stubborn chin. I know. Do you? I think so. Clara set the knife down. Then let me say it another way. Love should not require you to disappear. Lily looked at her mother for a long time. You didn't disappear. Clara almost laughed at the wonder of it. I almost did. But you came back. Those words stayed with Clara through the winter that followed. In February, Ruth suffered a minor stroke. It happened early on a Tuesday while she was unlocking the back door. Clara found her leaning against the wall, confused and trying to insist she was fine. The ambulance came quickly. Ruth survived, but recovery was slow. She had weakness in one hand and trouble finding certain words. For the first time since Clara had known her, Ruth seemed frightened. The shop changed overnight. Clara managed everything: suppliers, employees, hospital visits, insurance forms, Lily's school, and Ruth's therapy appointments. The old fear returned, whispering that she could not handle it. But there was no Martin now, no one to insult her into paralysis. There was only work to be done, and Clara had become good at doing work. One evening in the hospital, Ruth struggled to button her cardigan and curse it under her breath. Clara helped gently. I hate this, Ruth said, words slow but clear. I know. I built that shop with Daniel, then I let it die. You brought it back, now I'm useless. Clara sat beside the bed. Don't say that. It's true. No, Clara said firmly. You taught me how to stand, that is not useless. Ruth looked away, eyes wet. You would have figured it out. Maybe, but not as soon, not with flowers in my hands. Ruth laughed softly, then cried, and Clara held her hand. A month later, Ruth made a decision. She wanted Clara to buy into the business officially. Not as an employee, not as a helper, as a partner. Clara argued that she did not have enough money. Ruth said money could be structured. Clara said she was not ready. Ruth said readiness was a myth invented by people afraid of paperwork. Ms. Russell, the divorce lawyer who had become a friend, helped review the agreement. Clara signed with a shaking hand. The day the new sign went up, it read, Alvarez and Bennett Blooms. Clara stood on the sidewalk with Ruth, Lily, and half the neighborhood. The letters were painted green and gold. Clara stared at her name until it blurred. Lily squeezed her hand. Grandma would be proud. Clara's mother had passed 2 years earlier after a short illness, long enough to see Clara safe, not long enough to see her name on the sign. Clara swallowed hard. Yes, she whispered. I think she would. That same afternoon, Martin arrived. No sunglasses, no Vanessa, no polished arrogance. He parked across the street in an older sedan and stood for a moment before crossing. Clara noticed him from the window but did not move. Ruth, seated near the register with a cane beside her, saw him too. You want me to throw something? Ruth asked. Clara smiled, no. You sure? I have good aim with small vases. I'm sure. Martin entered as the bell rang above him. He looked around the shop and Clara watched him take in the employees, the customers, the new sign visible through the window, the framed magazine article near the counter, the photographs of weddings and events along the wall. Something flickered across his face. Not pride, not exactly regret, more like confusion, as if reality had disobeyed him. Clara, he said. Martin. He cleared his throat. The place looks good. Thank you. Ruth made a noise behind the counter that sounded suspiciously like a snort. Martin shifted his weight. Could we talk? We are talking. Privately. Clara looked toward the back room. Years ago, his request would have pulled her immediately into whatever space he chose. Now she considered it like any business decision. 5 minutes, she said. They stepped outside where late afternoon light stretched across Maple Avenue. Cars passed. Someone laughed in the coffee shop next door. The world did not pause for Martin Hayes, and that alone felt like justice. He put his hands in his pockets. I heard about Ruth, I'm sorry. She's recovering. That's good, he looked at the sign again. Partner now. And yes. He nodded slowly. You did better than I thought. Clara almost smiled. I know. The answer unsettled him. He looked down, then back up. Things have been difficult lately. I heard. Of course you did, everyone hears everything in this town. He tried to laugh, but it came out tired. The market turned, some deals went bad, Vanessa left. Clara felt nothing sharp at Vanessa's name. No triumph, no wound, just a dull understanding that people built on appearances often struggled when the lights changed. I'm sorry, she said, because she was. Not for the marriage ending, but for the human wreckage that arrogance always leaves behind. Martin studied her. You always were too kind. No, Clara said. I just don't want to become cruel because you were. That sentence landed harder than she expected. Martin's eyes moved away. I said things back then, he began. And yes, I was angry. You were honest. He flinched. Clara continued, her voice calm. You told me what you believed about me. I believed it for a long time too. I didn't mean. You meant every word, maybe not forever, maybe not today, but you meant it then. Martin rubbed his face, and for the first time she noticed how old he looked. Not old in years, but worn down by the weight of needing to be superior. I was wrong. Clara looked at him. For years she had imagined those words. In the bathtub, in the car, behind the bakery counter, beside stacks of bills, she had imagined Martin standing before her and admitting he had been wrong. She thought it would feel like fireworks. Instead, it felt like placing a heavy box on the ground after carrying it too long. Yes, she said, you were. I need help, he said quietly. There it was, the true reason for the visit. Clara waited. I'm trying to rebuild, I have contacts, but cash is tight. I thought maybe you knew people, event clients, business owners. Maybe you could put in a word, or, he swallowed. Maybe I could help here with sales, expansion, I know business. For a moment, Clara saw the old pattern trying to resurrect itself. Martin, stepping into what she had built, calling it help, rearranging the room until he stood at the center. Years ago, she might have mistaken his need for love. She might have felt responsible for saving him from the consequences of his choices. Now she saw it clearly. No, she said. His face tightened, just like that. Just like that. I'm not asking for charity. I know you're asking for access. That's unfair. So was telling me I'd never survive without you. He looked away toward the street. I apologized. No, you admitted you were wrong, that's different. A breeze lifted the corner of the new shop awning. Clara watched it flutter, steady and bright. Martin's voice softened. Does it make you happy, seeing me like this? Clara took a breath. The honest answer mattered. No, she said. It makes me sad, but not sad enough to hand you the keys to my life again. For the first time, Martin had no quick answer. I hope you rebuild, Clara said. Truly, but you will have to do it the way I did, one honest step at a time. He laughed bitterly. That easy. No, Clara said, not easy possible. They stood there in silence, two people who had once shared a house, a child, a bed, and a future. But the bridge between them had burned so long ago that even the ashes had become soil for something else. Finally, Martin nodded. Lily said she's proud of you. Clara's throat tightened. She should be, he added. I never gave her much reason to be proud of me. You still can, Clara said, but not by pretending, start with truth. Martin looked at her one last time, then crossed the street back to his car. Clara watched him drive away, and for once, his leaving did not feel like abandonment. It felt like weather passing. Inside the shop, Ruth raised an eyebrow. Well. Clara picked up a vase and began arranging stems. He wanted help. And I told him no. Ruth grinned. Good, my small vases were ready. Life did not transform into perfection after that. It never does. Martin remained Lily's father, which meant Clara still had to navigate school events, custody schedules, and awkward graduations someday. Some months business slowed. Some days Clara woke with old fear sitting on her chest. Healing is not a door you walk through once. It is a house you keep repairing. But the foundation had changed. The biggest test came the following year, when a fire damaged 3 storefronts on Maple Avenue, including part of Alvarez and Bennett Bloom's. It started in faulty wiring at the vacant store 2 doors down and spread smoke and water through the block. No one died, thank God, But Clara arrived before dawn to find firefighters rolling hoses through the street and black smoke staining the morning sky. For a terrible moment, she was the woman on the stairs again, empty and afraid. The front windows were cracked. The ceiling in the workroom had collapsed. Inventory was ruined. Orders for 2 weddings and a funeral were scheduled that week. Insurance would take time. Ruth stood beside Clara in a coat over her pajamas, cane trembling in her hand. Lily, now 15, held Clara's arm and whispered, "Mom." Clara looked at the damage and felt the old voice rise inside her. "You won't survive this." But it was no longer Martin's voice. It was only fear wearing his old clothes. Clara took out her phone. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady when she called Denise Walker. Then the church, then suppliers, then employees. Within hours, the community Clara had spent years serving began serving her back. The church opened its fellowship hall for workspace. Denise moved wedding timelines and contacted venues. Customers showed up with coffee, folding tables, extension cords, towels, and offers to deliver. A competing florist from the next town donated greenery and said, "Don't make me regret being nice." Ruth cried openly this time and blamed smoke. Clara worked 3 straight days in the church hall, rebuilding arrangements from salvaged orders and donated stock. Lily organized volunteers like a general. Ruth handled phone calls with a voice still slowed by her stroke, but sharp enough to frighten anyone who suggested canceling. The funeral flowers arrived on time. The weddings happened. One bride sent a photo afterward, her bouquet held high, sunlight passing through the petals like stained glass. The local news covered the story, not because of the fire alone, but because customers had lined up to help a flower shop survive. The headline read, "Community Rallies Around Beloved Maple Avenue Florist." A week later, Martin called. Clara almost did not answer, then she did. "I saw the news," he said. "And yes. Are you all right?" "We will be." A pause, then quietly, "I believe that." Clara stood in the temporary workspace at the church, surrounded by buckets and volunteers, and closed her eyes. He believed it now. But the miracle was that she no longer needed him to. "Thank you," she said. There was another pause. Lily asked if she could stay with you this weekend to help clean. "She can choose." "She chose you," Martin said, and the words carried a sadness Clara understood. "I told her yes." "That was good of you." "I'm trying." "I know." It was not forgiveness, not exactly. Forgiveness is a complicated country, and Clara was still learning its roads. But it was peace. Not the kind that pretends harm did not happen, but the kind that refuses to let harm keep happening inside your own heart. The shop reopened 6 months later, brighter than before. Insurance covered part of the repairs, fundraising covered some, loans covered the rest, and sweat filled every gap money could not. The new interior had pale wood shelves, a larger cooler, a workshop table near the windows, and a wall painted with a quote Ruth chose, "Some things bloom after the storm." On reopening day, the line stretched down the block. Clara stood behind the counter with Lily on one side and Ruth on the other. Her father, older and slower but still stubborn, sat near the front with tears in his eyes. He had driven from Knoxville with a handmade wooden planter box in the trunk. On it, he had carved Clara's name. "I'm sorry I couldn't help more," he told her. Clara knelt beside his chair. "Daddy, you taught me how to keep going. That helped plenty." He touched her cheek. "Your mama would be making everybody cry right now." "She still is," Clara said, and they both laughed through tears. That afternoon, Martin came with Lily after her weekend visit. He stayed near the doorway, holding a small envelope. Clara approached carefully. "For the shop," he said. Clara did not take it, Martin. "It's not money," he held it out. Inside was the old receipt from the restaurant, the one she had placed on the kitchen table years ago. The paper was faded, the ink nearly gone. Clara stared at it, confused. "I kept it," he said. "I don't know why at first. Maybe because it was the day everything started ending. Maybe because I wanted to remind myself you were the one who broke the marriage. That's what I told myself. But later," he swallowed, "later I realized it was proof of what I did, proof that you were right to leave." Clara looked at the small piece of paper. Once, it had been evidence of betrayal. Now it was just paper. "I don't need it," she said. "I know, I thought maybe you'd want to throw it away." Clara considered, then she called Lily over. "What is it?" Lily asked. Clara showed her a receipt from a hard day. Lily looked between her parents, understanding enough but not all. Why keep it? Sometimes people keep proof of pain, Clara said, until they're ready to stop carrying it. They walked together to the trash can behind the shop. Martin stood back. Lily held Clara's hand. Clara dropped the receipt in without ceremony. No speech, no music, no dramatic storm, just a small, faded paper falling into the dark. And with it, something inside her loosened. Years passed. Lily grew into a young woman who loved environmental science, strong coffee, and arguing with anyone who underestimated her. She received a scholarship to the University of Tennessee, and on the morning she left for college, Clara packed snacks into her car until Lily laughed and said, "Mom, I'm moving 2 hours away, not crossing the desert." Clara tried to smile, but tears came anyway. Lily hugged her in the driveway behind the shop. "You're going to be okay without me." Clara laughed through tears. "Listen to you. I had to ask." "I'll miss you every day," Clara said, "but yes, I'll be okay." Lily pulled back. "You know what I tell people when they ask about you?" "What?" "I tell them my mom built a life from ashes and flowers." Clara covered her mouth. "That's too poetic for a science major." "I contain multitudes," Lily said, grinning. Before she drove away, Lily took one last look at the shop. "Dad says he's proud of me." "He should be." "He says he's proud of you too." Clara looked down. Martin had rebuilt modestly over the years, not to his former glory, but perhaps to something more honest. He sold smaller homes now and volunteered with a financial literacy nonprofit after nearly losing everything. He and Clara were not friends exactly, but they had become careful allies in loving their daughter. Sometimes that is the best two people can do. "People can learn," Clara said. "Do you believe that?" "I have to," Clara answered. "I learned too." After Lily left, Clara walked into the shop alone. For a moment the quiet hit her hard. Motherhood had been the drumbeat of her adult life, and now the rhythm had changed. She ran her fingers over the work table, the same table where Lily had once done multiplication homework between buckets of tulips. Sunlight fell through the front windows. The bell above the door waited. Ruth had passed the winter before, peacefully in her sleep, after eating 2 slices of coconut cake and complaining that the frosting was too sweet. She left her share of the business to Clara, along with a note written in shaky handwriting. "You were never my helper. You were my proof that dead things can bloom again." Clara kept the note in the register drawer. On hard days, she read it. A year after Lily started college, Clara received an invitation to speak at a women's business luncheon in Nashville. The request came from a regional small business association that had heard her story through the Maple Avenue Revitalization Project. Clara almost declined. Public speaking terrified her. Then she imagined Ruth calling her a coward from heaven and accepted. The luncheon took place in a hotel ballroom with round tables, white linens, and women in blazers who looked far more accomplished than Clara felt. The program listed her as Clara Bennett, owner, Alvarez and Bennett Blooms. She stood backstage holding note cards that trembled in her hands. A young coordinator smiled, ready. "No." The coordinator laughed, assuming Clara was joking. Clara stepped onto the stage anyway. At first, the lights blinded her. She saw only shapes, faces turned upward, water glasses sparkling. She gripped the podium and looked down at her notes. The first line read, "Tell them how you survived." She had written it at midnight, then nearly crossed it out for sounding too dramatic. Now it felt too small. She took a breath. "Years ago," Clara began, "someone I loved told me I would never survive without him." The room became still. "I wish I could tell you," I answered with confidence because I knew he was wrong. But that would not be true. I was terrified. I had no job, no degree, very little money, and a daughter watching me to see whether women like us were allowed to start over. She looked up. No one moved. For a long time, I thought proving him wrong meant becoming rich, or impressive, or untouchable. I thought one day I would stand in front of him with a perfect life and say, "Look at me now." But survival is not a performance for the person who doubted you. It is a promise to the person you almost lost inside yourself. A woman near the front wiped her eyes. Clara continued, "I survived by cleaning offices at night. I survived by writing names on birthday cakes in a grocery store. I survived by asking for help when pride told me not to. I survived because a woman named Ruth handed me a broom and taught me flowers. I survived because my daughter needed a home where love did not sound like fear. I survived because every day I did one small thing that kept me from going backward. Her voice strengthened. And then something happened. Survival became skill. Skill became confidence. Confidence became a business. A business became community. And community became a life I do not have to escape from. The applause started softly, then grew. Clara had to stop until the room settled. So if someone has told you that you cannot survive without them, without their approval, without their money, without the version of yourself they prefer, I want you to hear me. You may not feel brave today. You may not know the plan. You may be tired down to the bone, but you are not the small version of you that someone else described. You are not their fear. You are not their insult. You are not their prediction. She paused, letting the words find the people who needed them. You are allowed to begin with shaking hands. After the speech, women lined up to talk to her. Some wanted business advice. Some wanted hugs. Some told stories in whispers. Husbands, bosses, parents, partners, friends, anyone who had mistaken control for love. Clara listened as long as she could. She did not pretend to have easy answers. She only told the truth. Leaving is hard, starting over is hard, healing is hard, but staying small forever is also hard. Choose the hard thing that gives you back to yourself. That night, back in her hotel room, Clara sat by the window overlooking Nashville lights and called Lily. How did it go? Lily asked. I didn't throw up. So, huge success. People cried. Mom, people cry when you describe grocery shopping. That is not true. You once made a cashier tear up talking about peaches. They were very good peaches. Lily laughed, and the sound filled the room like music. After they hung up, Clara opened a message from Martin. Lily sent me a clip of your speech. You were right. Survival is not about proving the doubter wrong, but for what it's worth, you did. Clara stared at the message for a while, then she typed back. I proved myself right, that matters more. She sent it, turned off the phone, and slept deeply. The final piece of Clara's transformation came not with applause, money, or Martin's admission, but on an ordinary Thursday morning in spring. She was 43 by then. The shop was busy with prom corsages and Mother's Day orders. Lily was home from college for the weekend, laughing with employees while wiring tiny roses. A little girl came in with her grandmother and stared wide-eyed at the cooler. Are you the flower lady? The girl asked Clara. Clara knelt. I am one of them. Do you make all this? With help. The girl looked around as if Clara had invented magic. I want to make pretty things when I grow up. The grandmother smiled apologetically. She says that every time we pass. Clara handed the girl a single yellow daisy. Then start now. Pretty things need people who care enough to notice them. The girl held the daisy like treasure. After they left, Lily leaned against the counter. You know she's going to remember that forever. Clara watched through the window as the little girl skipped down the sidewalk. I hope she remembers she can make things, Clara said. Lily studied her mother. Did you ever think your life would look like this? Clara looked around. Flowers opened in buckets. Employees moved through the shop with easy familiarity. Ruth's photo smiled from the wall. Her father's planter box sat by the window filled with lavender. Outside, Maple Avenue bustled with renovated storefronts, coffee drinkers, and neighbors who knew her not as Martin Hayes' ex-wife, but as Clara Bennett, the woman who made things bloom. No, she said softly, I thought surviving would be the whole story. What is it now? Clara smiled, living. That evening after closing, Clara stayed behind to clean the work table. The shop was quiet except for the hum of the cooler. She found an old notebook in a drawer, one she had used during the first months with Ruth. Inside were messy notes about flower care, supplier prices, delivery addresses, and calculations made in the margins. On the back page, she found a sentence she had forgotten writing. I am afraid I will fail. Below it, in Ruth's handwriting, were words added later. Failing is allowed, quitting yourself is not. Clara pressed the notebook to her chest and closed her eyes. She thought of the woman she had been the night Martin said she would never survive. She wanted to reach back through time and sit beside that woman in the kitchen. She wanted to tell her that the road ahead would be brutal, that she would lose sleep, money, pride, and certainty. She wanted to tell her there would be nights when she would think going back might be easier. She wanted to warn her about the broken car, the late rent, the courtrooms, the humiliating texts, the loneliness of making every decision alone. But she would also tell her about Ruth, about Lily's strength, about the first bouquet sold, about the wedding by the lake, about the sign with her name on it, about the fire that did not end them, about the speech in Nashville, about peace, about waking up in a home where no one measured her worth by obedience, about the day she would finally understand that survival was not something Martin had given her. It had been hers all along. Clara turned off the lights and stepped outside. The spring air smelled of rain and cut grass. Maple Avenue glowed beneath street lamps. She locked the door, then looked up at the sign. Alvarez and Bennett Blooms. For years, Martin's sentence had followed her like a curse. You would never survive without me, but curses only live as long as you keep repeating them. Clara had replaced his sentence with another, one built not from anger, but from evidence. I survived. I grew. I stayed. I became. She walked upstairs to the apartment that had once felt like failure and now felt like home. Tomorrow there would be orders to fill, bills to pay, calls to return, and a dozen ordinary problems waiting. Clara welcomed them. Ordinary problems were the sound of a life moving forward. And somewhere in the quiet rooms of her heart, the woman she used to be finally stopped apologizing. Because Martin Hayes had been wrong. Clara did survive without him. But that was only the beginning. She became someone he could never have imagined, not because he left, not because he doubted her, not because pain magically turned into power, but because she made a decision in the ruins of her old life. She decided that fear could ride beside her, but it would not drive. She decided that her daughter would inherit courage instead of silence. She decided that love was not proven by how much humiliation a woman could endure. She decided that a life rebuilt honestly, even from nothing, was better than a life maintained by pretending. That is the part people often miss when they talk about proving someone wrong. The real victory is not seeing their face when they realize they underestimated you. The real victory is the morning you wake up and realize you have not thought about their opinion in weeks. It is buying groceries without explaining yourself. It is laughing loudly in your own kitchen. It is decorating your small apartment exactly the way you like. It is telling your child the truth without bitterness. It is hearing your own name and recognizing the person attached to it. Clara did not become fearless. Fearless people are rare and maybe not even wise. Clara became faithful to herself. She became the kind of woman who could be afraid and still sign the papers, afraid and still apply for the job, afraid and still take the order, afraid and still stand on the stage, afraid and still say no when the past knocked politely at the door asking to be let back in. And in the end, that was more powerful than any revenge. The town remembered the story in pieces. Some remembered the divorce, some remembered the magazine article, some remembered the fire, some remembered the speech. But Clara remembered the whole thing differently. She remembered the first night on the mattress with Lily asking if starting over was bad. She remembered saying it was brave before she fully believed it. Maybe that is what courage is sometimes, telling the truth you hope to grow into. Years later, when Lily brought home a young man named Aaron for Thanksgiving, Clara watched her daughter move through the kitchen with ease, teasing him, correcting him, accepting help without shrinking. Aaron was gentle, a little nervous, and smart enough to wash dishes without being asked. After dinner, he complimented Clara's sweet potatoes 3 times, which earned him Ruth's old serving spoon as an honorary badge of approval. Later, while Aaron helped Clara carry leftovers to the fridge, he said, "Lily talks about you a lot. Should I be worried?" "No, ma'am, mostly with admiration." He hesitated. "She said you taught her that love shouldn't make you smaller." Clara stood very still. Aaron looked embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up anything heavy." "You didn't," Clara said softly. "You brought up something important." That night, after everyone left, Lily stayed behind to help clean. She leaned against the counter, older now, confident, no longer the little girl with red eyes in a bare apartment. "He's a good man," Clara said. "I know. Good." Lily smiled. "I learned what to look for." Clara turned away so her daughter would not see the tears immediately, but Lily saw anyway. Daughters always do. "Mom, I'm fine." "You're crying over a casserole dish." "It's a meaningful casserole dish." Lily hugged her from behind. and Clara let herself be held. This, too, was proof. Not the business, not the sign, not the applause. This daughter who understood that love should feel like room to breathe. This daughter who did not confuse control with devotion. This daughter who could choose tenderness because she had watched her mother choose freedom. Long after Lily drove away that night, Clara stood at the window overlooking Maple Avenue. Across the street, the old real estate office where Martin once worked had become a bookstore. The world had a funny way of rewriting spaces. A building that once held ambition and ego now held stories. A closed flower shop became a second chance. An apartment above an alley became a home. A sentence meant to destroy a woman became the beginning of her becoming. Clara opened the window a little. Cool air slipped in, carrying the faint scent of rain. She thought again of Martin, not with hatred. Hatred requires a kind of devotion, and she had no devotion left for him. She wished him peace if he could learn how to live with it. She wished Vanessa peace too, wherever she was. She wished every woman who had ever stood in a kitchen swallowing fear the courage to hear the small voice inside that said, "There is more than this." Then Clara made tea, sat at her small table and wrote a letter. Not to Martin, not to Lily, to the woman she had been. "Dear Clara," she wrote, "one day he will say you cannot survive without him. You will almost believe him because he has spent years teaching you to doubt your own hands. But your hands will learn. They will scrub floors, frost cakes, hold your daughter, trim roses, sign checks, rebuild walls, and open doors. They will shake. Let them shake. Shaking hands can still carry keys. You will be lonely, but loneliness will not kill you. You will be poor, but poverty will not define you. You will be humiliated, but humiliation will not be the end of your name. You will miss who you thought he was. That is allowed. Missing the dream does not mean returning to the cage. You will meet people who help you remember yourself. Let them. Pride is sometimes fear dressed nicely. Ask for help, take the broom, learn the flowers, drink the coffee, keep the receipt only until you are ready to throw it away. Your daughter is watching, but not to judge you. She is watching to learn whether women are allowed to rescue themselves. Show her yes. You will survive, then you will live, then you will bloom. Love. The woman you became. Clara folded the letter and placed it in the notebook with Ruth's handwriting. She did not know why. Maybe someday someone would need it. Maybe someday Lily would read it. Maybe someday Clara herself would forget and need reminding. Healing leaves breadcrumbs for the next hard season. Outside, thunder rolled softly in the distance. Clara smiled. Rain was coming. And she had learned, better than anyone, what rain could do for things determined to grow. The story of Clara Bennett was never really about a man who underestimated her. Men like Martin exist in many towns, in many houses, wearing many faces. They speak with certainty because certainty hides fear. They convince others they are necessary because they do not know how to be loved freely. They confuse dependence with devotion and silence with respect. Martin was part of the story, yes, but he was not the center. He had tried to make himself the sun, and for a while Clara had lived in that false orbit. But the day she walked away, trembling and broke, she began discovering her own gravity. The true story was about what happens after the door closes. After the dramatic moment, after the argument, after the papers are signed, after the person who hurt you drives away and the silence settles. That is where the real story begins. Not in the applause, not in the comeback montage. In the morning when the bills are still there. In the afternoon when your child needs lunch money. In the night when your feet ache and your pride wants to call the person who would mistake your desperation for proof. The real story begins when nobody is watching, and you choose yourself anyway. Clara chose herself badly at first, awkwardly, imperfectly. She chose herself while crying. She chose herself while making mistakes. She chose herself while doubting the choice. That mattered, because choosing yourself is not always a grand declaration. Sometimes it is not answering the cruel text. Sometimes it is showing up to work with swollen eyes. Sometimes it is refusing to spend one more minute defending your humanity to someone committed to misunderstanding it. And slowly, because life can be merciful in quiet ways, the choices became a path. The path led to Ruth. The path led to flowers. The path led to business cards, invoices, keys, employees, burnt coffee, wedding ribbons, funeral lilies, and a daughter who learned strength by watching it in motion. The path led to a sign with Clara's name on it and a room full of women hearing their own lives inside her words. The path led home. So when people asked Clara later how she proved him wrong, she never gave them the answer they expected. She did not say she made more money than him. She did not say she became more admired. She did not say she found someone better, though someday perhaps she might. She simply said, I stopped living like his opinion was evidence. That was the lesson. An insult is not evidence. A prediction is not destiny. A person who benefits from your fear is not qualified to define your future. Clara Bennett survived without Martin Hayes, yes. But more than that, she survived the version of herself that believed him. She survived the training, the shame, the shrinking, the apologies, the years of being told that safety and love were the same as obedience. She proved him wrong, but first she had to prove the frightened voice inside her wrong too. And one bright morning, with flowers opening around her and her daughter laughing in the next room, Clara realized she had done it. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But fully. The bell above the shop door rang, and a customer stepped inside carrying a photograph of a woman who had passed away. Clara greeted her gently, took the photo in both hands, and listened as the customer described a mother who loved yellow roses, hummingbirds, and Sunday biscuits. Clara listened the way Ruth had taught her, the way life had taught her, completely, patiently, without rushing grief. Then she began choosing flowers. Yellow roses for love. Baby's breath for tenderness. Eucalyptus for memory. A single white daisy for the small, brave girl who still lived somewhere inside Clara, the one who had once wondered whether starting over was bad. Clara tied the ribbon carefully. Outside, rain began to fall, soft against the windows. The customer looked worried. Oh no, I forgot my umbrella. Clara smiled and handed her one from behind the counter. Keep it. Are you sure? Yes, Clara said. I have survived worse than rain. The customer laughed, not knowing the whole story. Clara did. And that was enough.